Welcome to my YouTube channel. You can subscribe anytime during this video by clicking on the icon in the lower right hand corner. This is the narrated step-by-step tutorial for my painting Resting Dinghy. The photograph on the right is the reference and inspiration for this painting. It's a photograph I took of two small boats laying on the shore. This is my pencil sketch drawn on a quarter sheet, 11 inches by 15 inches, of 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. You can see here that I've drawn the major shapes of the boat. I've given an indication of where the edge of the land is, the shore. I've also indicated the shape of the grass and weeds that are grown along the edge of the shoreline. These are the colors that I used for this painting: royal blue, cerulean blue, pyrrole red, quinacridone burnt orange, raw sienna, rose madder quinacridone, and sap green. I'm going to begin by putting down a large wash over the whole composition, and I'm starting with a wash that has some raw sienna with just a touch of rose madder quinacridone in it, not a lot. I wanted to bring a warm element to the composition. I didn't want the water just to be all cold blue. And now I've come in with a mixture of cerulean blue with a little bit of royal blue in it and just a touch of burnt orange to take some of the rawness off the blue and tone it down a little bit. And I'm going to go back and forth here for a little bit just with some of the warmer mixture that I have on my palette and some of this blue tone. So now I'm going to bring this wash from the area that's going to be the water. So that's a large shape there where the water is. But I'm continuing this wash down around the boat shapes here, and I'm painting the shadows. So what I'm doing basically is putting down a wash of my very first value, my light value. And what I'm going to leave are some of the areas where I'm going to keep pure white. There's a number of elements to this composition. There's boats, there's rope, there's water, there's land, there's grassy shapes and weeds, but that's not what I'm paying attention to right now. Right now I'm looking and trying to make a decision on where my lightest lights and my pure white's going to be, and I'm bringing down this wash, and I'm seeing that as a big shape. Everything except the pure white of the paper that's going to be remaining. That's what I'm looking at right now. It's the same approach you use when you're working in your sketchbook doing thumbnail sketches and value studies. So far all I've used is a 1-inch flat wash brush, and you can do quite a bit with a larger brush just by rotating and changing your angle and how you apply paint to your paper. The wash that I applied is a very fluid wash, and the paper is saturated. If you look on the left, you can kind of see the glare of the light. It's glossy right now. So because it's still saturated, I can go back in and work into the areas where I've applied paint already without fear of having a blossom. So now I'm going back into this area that's the water with a little darker value mixture of blue, same with the royal blue and the cerulean blue, and I'm making some horizontal marks just to suggest some of the variation that you're going to see in the water. And I want to do this with the paper wet right now so I get these soft edges, and later I'll come back in on top of that and do some harder edge shapes. That area towards the back, that is the water in the distance, is still a little light, so I'm going to put a middle value wash into this to help differentiate between the distant background and what's closer to you, more in the middle and foreground. Now's the time to create some of these soft edges and some of these softer transitions of color or value. Later on in the process, it gets harder to do as you start to develop harder edges and your shapes start to get a little bit more definitive, your values get darker, and your shapes also get smaller. I also want to get some of the soft gradation of value and color on the boats. So I'm going to put a wash on top of this boat while the paper is still saturated. There's some areas of the paper where it started to dry and it's more of a damp condition. If I were to take this loaded brush that I have and put it on there, I'm going to get some backwashes, but where I'm at right now, it's still pretty wet. And I was going to do this boat right there on the left, but it's already dried too much, and if I were to do what I just did on this other boat, I'm going to get a blossom there, so I'm going to dry it and come back. I've thoroughly dried my paper. You can see it's lighter now. So I'm going to take a 1/2 inch flat brush, and now I'm going to make some more definitive marks in the water. So I'm going to use a combination of the tip of my brush, and I'm going to use the side of the brush. I'm going to take some of the moisture off and drag it on the edge of the brush to help create some texture in the water here. I'll also use the corner at times just to make a certain shape that I want to create. So here I'm using the edge or the side of the brush. I'm dragging it so I'm getting broken edges as I make some of those marks. And the area that's more towards the middle ground, closer to the shore, those areas are going to be more definitive. Some of the marks I make are going to have a harder edge. As I go back, there's going to be less definition as I get in the distant background. And here I'm looking more for a textural quality. So I'm going to drag the side of my brush to get those broken edges to give the suggestion of some of the same activity in the distance, but it's not as definitive as these marks that I make near the shore. And in some areas I'm just giving a hint of some of that texture. I don't want to overdo it because I don't want every area of my painting to look the same. There's certain areas I don't want it to be as obvious. I'm going to go ahead and insert the reference photo in the top left corner, and hopefully you can start to see some of the patterns of light that I've been following here as I put in some of these washes where I get some of the lightest lights. And now I'm coming in with a very dark value mixture. And I just want a dark valued earthy color. So I've got quite a combination of paint that I'm using. I'm using some sap green, some royal blue, some burnt orange, a little pyro red, some raw sienna, just to give me just a combination of some dark values that lean towards the warm and towards the cool. If you look at the reference photo, you see that there's these shapes that are these weeds and grass that are on the shoreline there on the other side of the boat. So I'm putting in this dark value along the edge of the boat, and then I'm going to take a scraping tool and I'm going to drag some of this mixture up. So this is a very fluid wash I'm putting down. Even though it's dark, it's very movable. So you can see here I'm taking this plastic scraper and just scraping that up to break those edges up and create some linear marks and some shapes that can be viewed as grass or weeds. You can see that I'm not trying to render exactly what I see in the photograph. I'm just trying to suggest those shapes, those grassy shapes there, and the weeds that are on the edge that has some buds on them. So I'm going to come in here now with my #1 rigger brush, and I'm going to make a few more linear marks, and I'm going to make some little dots and dashes to represent some of the dried up flowers or the buds that are on the end of some of these stems or grassy shapes. So what I did here was put that base wash in around the edge of the shapes of the boats, and I took that plastic scraping tool, and I scraped some of that paint up, pushed it and moved it, and then took a look at what I had there, and then came back here with the rigger brush and made some more intentional brush marks that are in specific areas where I wanted to add to the results from the scraping. A few of these are lighter value, like a very kind of a middle value bluish gray, so they seem a little bit like they're behind these darker shapes that are closer to us. I'm going to go back to the brush I was using, which is a jumbo round small wash brush, and I'm going to continue this wash, this dark valued wash, around these boat shapes. It's not going to be as obvious in the video, but this very dark wash has subtle variations in it of warm and cool. Some of the wash I'm putting down leans a little bit more towards the dark blue side, and some leans a little bit more towards the burnt orange or towards a sap green. But like I said, it's not going to be as obvious in the video. It'll be a little more obvious once it dries, but still not a lot. And I'm just putting down a big wash here. This is a fluid wash I'm putting down, and I'm going to grab my plastic scraper, and I'm going to drag some of that pigment up over the edge of this boat to give just a slight feeling of some grass there. And I need to do that before it gets too dry. There's just the tip of a boat that's coming into the composition there from the left, and it's in shadow, so it's dark value for the most part. So I've got a smaller general purpose round brush here that I'm just working this dark valued wash around the boat, and you can see I've painted just the indication of a rope that's hanging down from the underside of the tip of that boat. And I just bring this wash down to join the other wash, large area of wash that I had already put down. Now that this is dried completely, things have lightened up, and this water is too light going all the way back to the background there. So I'm coming in with a middle value wash. This has some royal blue in it with a touch of burnt orange. Just going to take that value down a notch. I'm going to finish with this shape of the tip of the boat here. Just taking a dark mixture. This boat has a rope that's laying on it, so I'm going to go ahead and paint that in. So I'm not making just a straight line or a curved line as I do this. I'm trying to make it irregular and feel like it has segments in it like a rope does, or the kind of a bumpy shape here. So it just lays on the top and then goes across and goes over the front left edge here. So I'm just going to give some indication that there's a rope there, but I have breaks in the line. It just provides more interest. And there's a couple other areas, detail areas here, where I'm going to do a little brush work. Now I need to put some darker values on these boat shapes. So I've got my jumbo round wash brush, and I'm going to just put this mixture here. This has royal blue, a little burnt orange, a little raw sienna, a little sap green in it. And just take that wash down. And some of these shadow shapes just kind of run into each other. This particular shadow here actually runs up the side, so I'm just going to take that same wash and bring it along the side there, right into the other shadow that's in the back there. And I want to soften that edge a little bit, so I'm going to take a fine mist spray here and just lightly hit some of the edges here just to soften them up a little bit and let that paint run a little. Now I need to get the back of this other boat here. Taking the same mixture. You can see how fluid that is and how it coats the paper. I don't have to work hard. I'm not painting a wall here. I'm just basically leading that bead of water over the paper, and it just coats it completely. And you might get a couple breaks here and there, but sometimes I'll leave those for texture. Here I'm just doing some detail work. There's a kind of a rim, the underside of a rim on the top of this boat here that's turned upside down. So I'm taking the number 4 round brush. This is a Aqua Elite from Princeton brush. It holds a nice point. It holds quite a bit of paint in it, but it's a good brush for some detail work. And just put in a few of these dark value details. I'm going to put that reference photo in the top left corner again, and you can see, if you look at this this boat that I'm painting, how the curvature of that has a bit of an arc towards the back part of it. It's not the flat side, but it starts to kind of roll downward. So now I'm putting this wash here to help show that change in the structure of the boat. And I'm trying to keep it soft edge because it's not a hard edge. It's a gradual transition on the bottom of the boat. And I'm just using a general purpose round brush to apply this paint, and I'm blotting it with a tissue, and I want to catch some of this on the side too. So one of the things to keep in mind is be very aware of the direction of your brush stroke, because you can help, the direction of your brush stroke can contour a surface and help describe that to the viewer. Here I'm just doing some detail work to clean up a few of the edges here. This is a dark value, and it's this edge or molding or whatever it is comes along the back there and stops part way. And I also want to put a light wash over the edge of the boat. I don't want that to be a pure white. So just a light wash over top of that. I want to create a little bit more depth by differentiating the foreground and the middle ground there a little bit more. So to do that, I'm coming in with a darker value over top of what I've done. Even though that was fairly dark, once it dries, it lightens up. But I'm coming in with my 1-inch brush here, and this is a mixture with some royal blue, some quinacridone burnt orange, and a lot of pigment in it to give me a dark, rich tone. And here you can see now I've put this down with a little bit of moisture in it. Even though it's got a lot of pigment, I'm taking my scraping tool and I'm just scraping and creating some areas of interest in that wash. So here I'm trying to make it look like these darker shapes are overlapping what's going on there. So that overlap and that change in value helps deepen the spatial relationship between the middle ground and the foreground. I'm going to take my flat brush and add some more linear marks here to suggest grassy shapes that that adds to that overlap and feeling of depth. I'm going to take my number 4 round brush here and take some of the mixture off my palette to put a little bit more bulk into some of the grass and the weeds here on the shore to change that shape a little bit. It's a little flat going all the way across, so I want to provide a little bit more interest. So I'm coming back, and while I've done some scraping and some brushwork before, I'm being more intentional with the marks I'm making than just scraping, and just giving the indication of some more of this activity to change the shape a little bit. And some of these marks that I'm making here right now are with a grayish blue tone, so they feel like they're a little bit farther back, although it's not a lot of distance, just a few feet. I want those to feel like they're behind some of these darker shapes that are closer to us. I'm going to take some of the raw sienna with a little burnt orange and add a little warmth to the rope here, make it feel a little more rope-like, and it picks up some of those tones that are happening in other areas of the composition. I want a stronger indication of some of the ripples in the water, so I'm going to go back into that area with my brush, a little darker value, and some of these marks are a little longer than what I had. Not a lot, just enough to help this read a little better. And I'm not going to take this dark value that I'm putting down right now and these types of shapes all the way back, because these are closer. That helps differentiate what's going on in the distance from the middle ground there, and helps the viewer understand where the foreground, middle ground, and background are at by strategic use of value and detail. Now I'm going to put a white mat over this so we can get rid of the tape and get a good look at the painting. And there you have my painting, Resting Dinghy. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to my channel and join my mailing list. You'll find both of those in the box on the screen, as well as some of my past videos.